ACCUCARE Physical Therapy and Sports Medicine in Brick, New Jersey offers a state-of-the-art facility with all the best and current treatments. With athletic trainers, massage therapists, and doctors of physical therapy, ACCUCARE has everything you need to stay healthy and perform at the highest level. Cupping, stretching, laser therapy, compression boots, and a full-body cryo chamber are just some of what you can expect at ACCUCARE. Check out their website and social media links in my bio. No prescription is needed to see them. So call them today and start feeling and performing at your best. Again, thank you to ACCUCARE for sponsoring the Shore Football Report. Just got two things to say right now. First, I want to thank ACCUCARE. They are awesome, our great sponsor. Get there. If you haven't been there yet, make an appointment, get to ACCUCARE, especially towards the end of the season when your body needs to get that extra push and be healthy on the football field. Rehabilitation, recovery, they are the best. Make an appointment, call them and tell them you're coming. All right. The Shore Football Report is definitely endorsing going to ACCUCARE. They're the best out there right now. And they have athletes going there around the clock, all sports, and that's that. And also, when you're transitioning to another sport, your body is gonna be needing this ACCUCARE treatment because you're using different body parts. So just make sure that you utilize ACCUCARE, located in Brick. They are the best. I love being associated with them. They are part of the team, the Shore Football Report team.
All right, Rob, it was a historic weekend for the Shore Conference. Just an unbelievable season continues. We had two huge wins for the public school teams, another one for a non-public. We'll talk about the public ones briefly because you were there. We'll start. Toms River North just continues to be a threshing machine to everyone in their path. 42-14 over Edison. They're now in the inaugural Group 5 championship game. I mean, you saw it. Micah Ford and company just keep rolling on.
You said it. But I'll tell you what, I was watching more of the front, and Micah Ford ran this power play and wasn't even touched. I know he looked pretty separating from the whole line of scrimmage, but their offensive line and defensive line are playing at a level I've never seen before. I mean, they are truly, I believe, the number one public school team in the state of New Jersey. Just dominate another team that won a state championship, the sectional championship, and beating them that easily, 42-14, was very impressive. And we're going to start talking about, is this one of the best public school teams ever to come out of the Shore Conference? We may have that discussion in 2 weeks.
I don't even think you need to qualify it with public school. You might just say one of the best teams, period, that's ever come out of the Shore Conference, public or non-public. Micah Ford, 291 and 5 touchdowns in that Edison game.
In three quarters.
They're going to play in that first weekend in December. They're the state's leading highest scoring team in New Jersey. Yep. Over 600 points for the season, which no Shore Conference team has ever done. It's just been an unbelievable season. And now they're going to have the shot to make one more bit of history. They're already the first 13-0 Shore team. Now they're going be the first 14-0 Shore Conference team. The other score that I admit, Rumson's a great program, but to see that they were up 42-0 at one point on Willingboro, the final score was 42-6. Willingboro scored against the backups on the last play of the game. But I know the wind was a big factor at that game, but really Rumson just seems like they're playing their best football at the right time.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of Rumson getting better. Willingboro, I mean, you are what you are with your record. They had 5 losses going into the game. So 5 teams were able to find, a way to beat them, and Rumson just took it to them. They were running the football. in the cold weather, windy weather, Rumson was running the football to go along with their good pass offense too. But Rumson looks really good. Rumson looks like they've been there before. That was the difference between Rumson and Willenboro. If you looked at both teams, you saw Rumson full of confidence and knew where the next step was going to be at, and Willenboro kind of like almost like, yeah, we won last week, and did not show up. So Rumson looked very impressive, and they build themselves to a game against Caldwell, who is on a 27-game winning streak. I mean, what a climatic type of game that's going to be in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll get into that more next week ahead of the game, but this is the perfect spot for Rumson because they've been the giant slayers in this whole run of sectional championships. They've played undefeated teams that are averaging, 40 a game and shocked them, and they've done it multiple times. So they're going to be the underdog in this. Like you said, that's the state's longest current winning streak in Caldwell. And now Rumson, their coaching staff has done an amazing job year after year of getting that team to peak at the right time. They'll have a regular season loss or some setbacks, but they always seem to be playing their absolute best football at the most crucial time of the year. And they're always playing their best football at the end. So they're a really tough out. And I think, everyone's going to say, oh, Caldwell, look at these numbers. They're so great. And that's true. But I think Rumson can absolutely win that game.
Well, Rumson's a program that year in, year out are also, at that point, Caldwell, I don't think they can say that. I think Rumson, what did you say? The last 8 out of 10 years, they've been in the finals. Not too many programs can say that. Right,
especially given that, one of those years was the COVID year where there wasn't even a championship game.
Correct.
So
Correct.
This program, and I think the other thing that's huge is they're so versatile, right? They showed against Raritan in that amazing comeback that they could get into the quick game and throw the ball, no huddle, every play if they had to, and make it happen. And then they showed against Willingboro if they had to take Alistair Orr and pound you with the run game and play defense up front, and then, hit some passes to Scott Venancio and the other guys, they can do that. Orr ran for almost 100. O'Toole threw for 136. So they have great balance. So these are the type of teams that can win this time of year, especially when weather becomes a factor where, hey, if we have to throw it to beat you, we can do that. If we have to run it and play tough defense, we can do that too. So I think that was a big thing for them.
And Jerry Schulte put pressure on that freshman quarterback. I don't think he was expecting. And on the other side with John Corneliuson, when they were in their 2-minute no huddle and they needed to do it at the end of the half and they drove right down the field, it looked like they were on air. So they were clicking. Their game plans were working on both sides of the ball, and their kicking game has been coming through big time too, with splitting kicks with the two kickers and playing good field position. So they are looking real well.
And speaking of another team playing outstanding football at the most important time of the year, the team that's also right there in the argument for the number one team in the short conference, RBC, fell into an immediate 14-0 hole, and it was a little jarring, but they absolutely destroyed Holy Spirit in the second half for a 50-21 victory over a good team. I thought that was a statement victory by the Caseys.
Scott, in the first 3.5 minutes, it was 14-0. They drove right down the field, dinking and doinking in their no huddle, empty sets. I dare you to run the football. They wouldn't run the ball at all. I mean, they were clicking. And, you kind of want to judge a game sometimes by the first drive. And Holy Spirit scored on their first series very impressively. And then Frankie Williams dropped back, not on play action, dropped totally back on a pass. And I don't think that's their strength. I think he's great with his RPOs, but he dropped back, got the ball stripped. They recovered it and scored a touchdown. Before you know it, was 3.5 minutes. But the demeanor on the sidelines with the coaches, we'll get ours, we'll get it back. And from that point on, they scored 50 points against a good Holy Spirit team. And I'll tell you what, Sabino Portella, they kind of don't use him a lot during the season, but when it's time to use him, he is the best running back, I think, in the short conference, without a doubt. He's not going to make the all-star teams, I think, as a safety, but as a running back, he is a excellent offensive player. And we'll talk more about him later today, too.
Yeah, I mean, he's a workhorse. They were able to give him the ball almost 30 times. He ran for 190 yards, 3 TDs in that game. Portella is a given. We know he's one of the best players in the short conference. The one thing that really impressed me, given that it was this sleet, disgusting, windy mix that really threw off the passing game of Holy Spirit, but yet Frankie Williams hit 2 big passes to Emmanuel Ross for touchdowns in that game.
The end of the half, 8 seconds. They ran.
I can hear your voice echoing my head the whole time. I'm waiting for the huge breakout game for Emmanuel Ross, blah blah, and he did it. I mean, 2 big catches.
RBC drove right down the field, and they fell for a pump and go, and he scored on a 40-something yard touchdown. Like, who goes for the pump on with 8 seconds left? Credit to Ross and Williams, 2 underclassmen, making a big time play, tying up the score at halftime. The snow started coming down. RBC did not get stopped in the second half. They were very impressive. They were just physical football team against a good Holy Spirit.
They were in the backfield the whole time. They picked Sabino Portela, I think, had an interception too. They had, their secondary was all over them, picking the ball off, knocking down passes. That second half was really, really impressive. I mean, Holy Spirit is a quality program and team, and they just completely dominated them after halftime. And now they get a rematch with DePaul as they're trying to win their second straight non-public B title. They beat DePaul last year, low-scoring slugfest, 13-8. So now they're going to go back up to MetLife Stadium and hopefully have some good football at MetLife Stadium compared to what's been up there the last couple of weeks.
It's a rivalry, though, Scott. I mean, you got these 2 teams. There's a rivalry now. I mean, RBC beat DePaul. So there's a kind of a rivalry being built right now, and hopefully this will keep being played years and years and years for the state championship. And we got a team that we're very proud of, and DePaul, and those schools up North Jersey with the Big 5 parochials, and DePaul's one of them. I really believe that they play all the big teams. They play a great schedule, so this is going to be a great game. Hopefully a remake of last year with the win, of course, of RBC.
Right, and RBC's never repeated as state champs, so they're chasing a bit of history. And like you said, you might look at DePaul's record and say, they're barely over 500, but they play one of the most grueling schedules, if not the most grueling schedule in the state. They play St. Joe Montvale, they play Don Bosco twice, or they play Bergen Catholic. It's just like one after another. They got a million tough games. They go out of state and play people. They play St. Peter's. So it's a question of, is a battle-tested team as good as, can rise to the challenge to face an RBC team that clearly is the favorite after winning last year, coming in ranked in the top 5 in the state. RBC to me is playing their game right now. If they could do that in bad weather, if they actually get a decent day on Friday at MetLife Stadium, that only is to more of their advantage. And DePaul is a heavy passing team. They throw the ball a ton. That's their bread and butter. Their quarterback's a freshman. They do have one of the best sophomores in the state, a wide receiver, Desi Jones. He had a touchdown catch in the semifinals. Mm-hmm. He's got offers from, Pittsburgh, Ole Miss, Syracuse, Rutgers, a couple others. So he's going to be a real factor for that RBC secondary to have to contain him. But if RBC can establish the run with Portela and Torrin Harmon, as they've shown, they're almost impossible to beat.
No, you're right. Somebody asked me, is RBC not as good as last year? I'll beg to differ on that because, yes, he graduated Brown, but Frankie Williams is having an outstanding, not just sophomore season. I mean, any type of season for anybody. He's having a great year. So I don't think there was a big dip at quarterback position. I think Emmanuel Ross is having a big year. They always have Rahman on the other side, ready to have a big game and all that. And their O-line's physical. And I think they're as good as last year. And that says a lot because I thought they were very good last year. So,
well, and I also think, too, that Holy Spirit game was good in the sense they saw a prolific passing team. I mean, a team that throws on almost every single play, like you said, empty backfield like crazy. So, DePaul's leading rusher, Almeida, has like 600 yards rushing. This is not a team that's trying to just like ram it down your throat. So they're going to try to throw the ball a ton. But now RBC just saw a team that tries to do that. So I think that helped, like, as far as their secondary. And I thought the RBC secondary played really well.
Yes, he did.
Like a lot of the guys from the other side of the ball, Ross was back there. Portela was back there. I mean, they were making plays on both sides of the ball. I thought that helps them going into a game like this.
I was impressed how the kind of, were getting stronger as the weather was getting worse, too. And that shows they were mentally tougher. I thought they were. But Holy Spirit, by no means, was a bad team. That was a good football team, well coached. They were executing, but Red Bank Catholic stuck to their game plan and kind of wore them down and wore them down. And when you watch the film, they looked like they didn't want to tackle Portela at a point. So that was their game plan, to be physical with them on both sides of the ball. They wore them down, and of course, they won a big game quite impressively in the second half, because it was a close game for at least 2 quarters.
Right. And DePaul, it's interesting, it's more of a loss that's most impressive for them, in that they took Don Bosco Prep, perennial juggernaut in the non-public A final, number 1 team in the state. They only lost to them 28-25. Yeah. So they're a difficult, this is not, they just broke into the NJ.com state rankings this week in like the high teens, like 18 or so. They haven't been like a high ranked team all year because they haven't actually gotten over the hump and gotten a win against one of these other North Jersey powers, but they've played some of them really, really tough. So I think that, that shows their potential. But certainly RBC is the strong favorite in this game. And I know they would be disappointed if they don't get this one. But yeah, they're facing a team that has a ton of motivation because you beat them last year for a championship.
That's not good for RBC. You're right. When the other team has something to really be motivated for, because now they have the target on them, RBC. Campanile, who's the head coach, was the offensive coordinator for many, many years. I think he's one of the best play callers out there. He's very innovative, a lot of RPOs, utilizes his speed, gets his athletes the ball in many, many ways, high tempo. That, RBC's prepared for that, but I don't know if they saw a team, maybe the exception, Seton Hall Prep, of a DePaul.
Do you think, and I know this might be as a coach, this game is at 3:00 on a Friday, which is like a weird time, right? You don't normally ever play a game that time. Does that throw you off in any way, or
It could. You're right. I mean, at 3:00 during the day, kids are usually doing something different other than competing for a state championship. Your body, you want to practice like the time that you're playing in a game. So maybe Coach Lang might be practicing more at 3:00 this week instead of at night or early morning or whatever they're doing on the days off. But you want to make sure that your body is adapting to when you're playing a football game that we're practicing to, so your body's getting adjusted. I don't think it would be a big thing because it is 3:00. Most teams practice at 3, but you're right. I think it might be different more for the fans, than anything else. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the way RBC's playing, I think they're the type of team too that's coming out. I don't know if you can do what you did last week and immediately fall in a 14-0 hole against DePaul and just rally right out of it. That might be a little bit too much to ask out of your offense, especially given how low scoring this game was last year. Similar players on both sides. I mean, do you see this game? Is it more of a defensive struggle, or is it more 2 high-powered offenses and it's going to be 31-28?
No, 20s. I don't see 30s at all with this team. Both teams, are good physical football teams, but Red Bank Catholic wants to keep it lower. I don't think they're going to be scoring 50 and beating a DePaul team. I don't think they feel comfortable with that. But I think it'll be in the 20s. RBC is not going to be rowing high pace offensively. They 2 platoon a lot of players too. So I think they want to slow the game down against DePaul, just because DePaul's got too much speed. They got a lot of speed. They can score at any time, and that's scary. Holy Spirit missed on a couple key balls. They were running some fake bubble screens and throwing fades and just missing, which was scary because it could have been a couple more touchdowns there. But I don't see RBC want to get in a foot race with these guys at all.
Right, and it's like you look at Del Bar and you see once they've gotten into this state bracket and away from all those, the Don Boscos and Bergen Catholics, they put 42 on Immaculata and then 35 on St. Joe's Hamilton. So that shows what their offense is not playing, another top 2 or 3 team in the state. They have been able to rack up some points.
Not good.
But, RBC's, you talk about Bergen and Bosco and whatever, RBC's ranked right behind them, like in most state polls. So they should be considered up on that level, and now they just got to go out and prove it. But they seem to be playing like, on a mission with a chip on their shoulder, even though they're so highly ranked. I think they like being in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
they like any little bit of doubt, saying they're not number one or saying that they're not, this dominant team. That bothers them, and they want to go out and prove it every week. So I still think, even though they're the favorite and the target is on them because they beat this team last year, they play like as if they're like an underdog.
Oh, trust me, I've heard it. So I know. I definitely heard it. We are definitely rooting for him. I mean, you got Davin Bruton. I mean, he's a big-time player. Coach Lang's done a great job of getting these guys getting looked at by major college programs, and DePaul on the other side also has guys like that too. So this is an elite game, not just for RBC, but for the short conference. Winning this 2 years in a row would be huge for them and also us in our short conference.
I know that they say by the time you've played this many games, you're not a freshman or a sophomore anymore. But Derek Zammit, the quarterback for DePaul, is a freshman. I mean, do you feel like that atmosphere, of a state final could potentially get to somebody that young who hasn't played in a game like that before?
I mean, yes. I mean, a 15-year-old, I don't care if he's playing for a Group 5 or a Group 1. But, I mean, we're watching now. Today, there's a lot of freshmen out there doing well, here or there. So I guess times have changed. Back in the day, me just talking to a senior when I was a freshman, kids today, they just mingle, they hang out with seniors. It's a different lifestyle right now. But, he's a freshman, and they got to go after him. They got to test him. They got to test that kid. They didn't play against him last year. Red Bank Catholic is full of experienced football players. You got to say that's going to be an advantage to them this game. But I would have to make the freshmen try and beat them. Why not?
We'll see. It'll all be Friday afternoon up at MetLife Stadium. And I can promise you one thing. Frankie Williams will definitely play better than Zach Wilson.
We promised we weren't going to talk about the Jets.
There's still some Thanksgiving games. I know it's not a big thing in the short
really?
statewide anymore. We'll start with one that's actually Wednesday night, and that is Long Branch and Red Bank Regional facing off for the Ty Lewis Trophy, one of the longest and oldest Thanksgiving rivalries in the short conference. Both teams had a good season. Long Branch made the postseason, had a huge, stunning win over an undefeated Pennsauken team in the first round before bowing out to the eventual champion, Mainland, in Central 4. Red Bank just missed the playoffs, but then won their section in the
regional tournament.
By beating Brick Memorial, rattled off 3 wins in a row. So, both teams trying to end a good seasons on a high note. This is the first year of Chad King coaching in as a head coach for Long Branch. Dan George, this was always a big thing for him because he knew Ty Lewis, coached with him. He's the late Red Bank coach who died from cancer, a beloved coach in the town. Meant a lot to Danny, and he's always impressed upon everybody. And then Shane Fallon, his first year in his year coaching, he's now coaching in it for the Bucks, and he knows all about the tradition too. His dad, George Fallon, was the coach in a long time. So Shane, growing up, knew all about this game. I think I think it's a fun matchup of the Red Bank offense, which is fun. 30 plus in 3 games against a Long Branch defense that shut a lot of people down.
They're playing good football, Red Bank. Shane's got them playing good football, offensively, defensively. They're not hurting themselves with turnovers or penalties. They have a lot of play. They're not huge. But they have a lot of playmakers, different guys. I always say have fingerprints on the football. But talking to Shane Fallon, he's excited about the future at Red Bank and finishing up strong, get their 8th win against a Long Branch team, which is very dangerous and can beat anybody in the shore on any given time. And having that win against Pennsauken was huge for Chad King, and watching his celebration inside the locker room was great. So they're both playing on high emotions. It is a rivalry. I can't wait to be there on the sidelines and watching it. There'll be a lot of offensive, playmakers on that field, and I'm excited to see that. So a lot of good football players are going to be on some of the old short teams in this game.
Right, and then on actual Thanksgiving Day, we move to Middletown, where Middletown South will host Middletown North, their longtime game since the 70s. South has had a big edge in this rivalry. The crazy thing for me is Middletown North's last game was like October 24th or 28th. So they basically haven't played a game for a month while preparing.
They have to get acclimated with their uniforms again.
Right. I mean, I know in the past teams might practice for like 2 weeks or something like that, but to not have a game for a month is crazy. While Middletown South made it to the Central Jersey Group 4 final where they fell to Mainland, but that was only just 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So for them, it hasn't been. And I'll be interested to see North, because in their last game, their playoff game, everyone was hurt. Luke Sheehan, Lopez, like a lot of their top players were out of that game. Are they all back, and are they playing? And again, can you maintain the focus and everything to play a game when you haven't played in like a month?
Scott, you can have an injury for 4 weeks and still play, because the 5th week you're playing a game. Right. So, yeah, throw out the records. Let's just throw out the records. 2 good, prideful football programs playing. Coach Bush and Coach Antonucci are definitely going to put a good product out there for this game. And, it always is a good game. It's exciting. Everybody always tells me that you got to see a Middletown North, Middletown South rivalry game. I've never seen a Wall-Manasquan, which we'll talk about in a second. But I'm very interested to see if those guys are coming back. And if they are, it could be a good game right from the beginning.
Right. And I think in recent years, too, a lot of times Middletown South had a state final game after this game. So it was like, how are you going to play it? This year, they can both all just go all out, because this is it. This is the end of the season, and, you're a senior. You want to end on a high note. And then you talk about another great rivalry. You just mentioned it. Wall will be at Manasquan. The atmosphere is crazy at this game every year. The records don't matter. The crowd is huge. I'll say this, for years as a reporter, and I never did this at any other games, I would buy 50-50 tickets at this game, because you might hit it for like $6,000 and have the greatest Thanksgiving ever, even if you give like half of it back to the parents club, because there's always a huge crowd. This is an interesting game to me, because these are 2 teams that enter every year with high expectations, and it didn't work out for either of them this year. Wall started 0-6, but actually has now rallied back to 4-6 and won their regional
invitation.
For the non-playoff qualifiers. Manasquan lost in the first round of the state playoffs to Highland. The story of their season has been injuries. Jameer Howard, he's in the lineup, he's out of the lineup. Brett Patton in the lineup, out of the lineup, and it's just they could never really get it all together. With getting their full lineup in there all the time with any consistency, where, Wall, I think this is a big momentum game for them. If you can start 0-6 and then rally almost back to get to 500 and enter next year on a 5-game winning streak, that's got to bring some momentum for them.
Yeah, correct. I mean, to think that Wall was just 1 game away from the state playoffs. They didn't get the second win, so they had to play that regional invitational tournament to win it, and beat everybody convincingly. They were definitely proven we're a state playoff team, just not in it with that. But yeah, both programs are not used to being 4-6 or 4-5. It's been one of those years for Manasquan where just they never were able to all get on the same page and get a consistent thing going on. But for a 1-game performance, Manasquan can give you a great show with the athletes they have and the program they have. And Wall's got something to prove. Coach Guerreri's first season wants to be on a 5-game winning streak. Imagine being on a 5-game winning streak and still being under 500. It's crazy. But they can get on a 5-game winning streak and get that program going. I know he's got a very talented, I believe, freshman class coming up too. So there's brighter days going to be happening.
I think that's Wall's feeling. We're not going to be down for long. I hope everybody got their licks in this year, because next year we're going to be a factor again.
Very correct. Very correct.
That's their feeling. And honestly, having seen that game, I've seen it some years where, again, both teams might have been also ran teams. Records weren't great. And they go all out like it's like the Super Bowl, because those kids all know each other their whole lives. And, they'll see each other in the Manasquan boardwalk in the summer and be trash talking of who won and who didn't and this and that. So it means a lot to these programs. So, it's always a great atmosphere. I mean, a lot of years that decided division titles, number 1 team in the Shore, all that kind of stuff. And, hopefully we'll get back to that level.
And who's paying the tab at the local bar? Because there's a lot of friends and families. They got a lot of money on the table saying, "You win, I'll pay. I win, you're paying for the some type of dinners, some bets with that. But yeah, it's good ribbon going on. It's a great atmosphere from what everybody tells me right there. The game's packed and nobody in the stands cares about what the record is. They just care about that game, like Army Navy. Great. I love the traditional games. They're a dying breed. They really are. My take on
these are two schools that really fought hard against eliminating Thanksgiving. Probably the schools that fought the hardest. I mean, the Middletown too, but because obviously there was this movement to get rid of all Thanksgiving games, so that we could have expanded state playoffs and play to the groups, which they figured out a way to do that while also keeping the Thanksgiving game if you still want it. So I think that was a good compromise that I always wanted a group champion. I always wanted to know who's the best group 4, group 5 team in the state. We're getting that. But you also, if teams still want to preserve this tradition, they can.
Yeah, I think people are going to adjust their schedules next year that are playing Thanksgiving throughout the state because, like Milltown North, there was a big window of you could actually practice probably for your winter sports for 2.5 weeks, come back, practice for 2 weeks, and play a game.
Yeah, I think that month-long gap is a lot. That's hard to get motivated every day when the game is not for 3 weeks, and it's really just and it's a pride game. It's not like for a championship or something,
No, I think it's but looking at those 6 teams all playing this week, I don't see any of them changing Thanksgiving Day games. I think the administration, the Board of Education, the community are embracing this, and they want to be different. Let everybody else.
Asbury Park and Neptune did play this past Saturday. Asbury had a 48-7 amazing win for them to end the season. So that game potentially maybe go back to Thanksgiving and be another one because that's also been one of the longest running rivalries in Shore Conference history.
They snuck that by us because nobody told me about the game.
No, and then all of a sudden, and they had it on a day when there's Shore Conference teams playing to go to group finals. Like the spotlight is not on the local.
It still was a great crowd. It was like they hid it from the Shore Football Report and still put a couple thousand people at the game. They're good. They're good.
No, it's a great tradition, and again, we can talk about this when we talk about the candidates for Coach of the Year and things like that. But what an ending for Lamar Davenport of a kind of a tumultuous first season as far as everything he had to deal with to go out there as a Group 1 school and beat your rival as a much bigger school that handily. That's a nice exclamation point for a special senior class, especially at Asbury Park. The season's not totally finished yet, but we really want to get to talking about some of the overall award winners for the Shore Conference. Now, there was just a handful of games left. We're going to start with the award that's nearest and dearest to your heart, Rob, the coaches.
Yeah.
The overall Coach of the Year in the Shore Conference. I know you have a couple candidates in mind, so let's talk about them right now. Who are the top contenders?
There's a lot of great coaching stories out there. We know that, but let's narrow it down to 4. All right, and 3 of them are all playing for the state championship. You got to. You win the state championship.
If you're still playing this time of year, you did something right.
Something's right. So let's, and not in any order, but let's talk about like Dave Ozowitz at Toms River North. He's 13-0, never been done before. Could be 14-0 with all the other records that they're breaking over there. And this could be one of the all-time great teams, arguably at some households right there. So I think Toms River North's Dave Ozowitz has got to be a candidate. You have Mike.
And I'll pop in real quick because this is always an interesting discussion to me for Coach of the Year. Some people say, oh, his team's loaded. They have a ridiculous amount of talent and all that. But my whole point is if you deliver on all that talent and you dominate with everything, you should be credited for that. It's not always the coach who seems to take the team that people don't think is that great on paper and overachieve. Sometimes it could be the coach that takes a loaded team and delivers on their potential.
He's a leader. And you also have egos. And everybody wants the football. And, we've been on the sideline, so we've seen it. You got to be able to kind of control all the different egos out there and make it work. And he's made it work. They're 13-0. End of discussion. Mike Lang of Red Bank Catholic. Going for his second state championship, doing a great job. Hasn't lost in the Shore Conference in quite a while. You have to say he is a guy. If he wins the state championship for the second year in a row, he's definitely got to be a high candidate for a Shore Conference. Right, Coach?
And I think that he's a guy that has the most pressure on him from year to year because that roster is so good.
Yes.
If you even slip up twice, you have people wondering, well, what's the problem over there? What's going on? You might go 9-2, and it's like, well, that was a disaster. So that's a lot of pressure at those non-public programs with those kind of rosters. You're expected to deliver, and he's delivered. They're back in the state finals again.
And then Jeremy Schulte, his first year, been in the program forever.
And I feel like he's really roared into the picture the last couple weeks.
Yeah, he's done a great job, doing what he's doing, getting to a place where, where they wanted to be in the beginning of the season. So Jeremy Schulte is also another candidate. And let's go.
And I would say, he would be the dark horse behind those guys initially. But the big thing is they're playing a Caldwell team that is undefeated and has won 27 games in a row in the Group 2 final. So if they stun them, that's a pretty darn good argument to be Coach of the Year.
Boy, are we creating these storylines for every one of them. And then the other one, and it's going to be out of right field, but Jason Degato of Marlboro. I mean, what he did to a program that hasn't been there in years to make the state playoffs with their top player getting injured the way he did, and it didn't look good, and they still won 2 more games, beat a Washington Township home, and did it. He didn't win the state championship, but he did
First
win
state playoff win since 1994. First playoff appearance since 1999, and their most wins from that season. And like you said, no AJ Schwartz for most of the season after he suffered a season-ending injury. Cassidy, another one of their top players, didn't play against Toms River North in the semifinals and missed other parts of games with injuries. So, your 2 real standout guys, you didn't even have him for the whole season. I thought the job he did was phenomenal. I mean, we know the history of Marlboro football. It's not pretty. For the last couple of years, they've really started to turn around. And this, to me, was a special, breakthrough season for them. I
mean, if you think about those 3 teams playing for the state championship, if everyone wins, it's like, how do we justify this guy with that guy? It's like, can you help us out? One person win it, and it would be so much easier. A lot of great.
Because again, you'll get back to that argument. You'll say, look at what Jason Degato did with somewhat of an undermanned team at a program that hasn't done a lot in 30 years. But then you go, okay, but look at what Dave Ozerowitz just did. Every historical record-breaking everything. If they go 14-0, and you say, how is that not a superlative performance? Then you say, RBC, you know how hard it is to win a non-public bracket in New Jersey, and they did it 2 years in a row. So there'd be that. And then Schulte, you'd say, well, this was a team that, they suffered losses early in the season, and they thought, it's a kind of a mediocre Rumson team. Here they are playing for the first overall Group 2 state title. And again, if they go out and shock Caldwell, you say, well, they just took down a team that had New Jersey's longest winning streak.
We can't even flip a coin because it doesn't have 4 sides. So it's we got to make a tough. We got to make a tough decision.
It's going to be really tough, but that's the way it is every year. When you're talking offensive player of the year, you got 4 or 5 top candidates. In my mind, everybody's playing for second in this award. But because to me, there's one guy who stands above them all. But let's hear who you believe could be the top players just as the offensive player of the year for the entire short conferences.
Well, the way you were smiling, I think you're talking about Micah Ford of Toms River North. Yeah, I mean, is he a one-man wrecking crew? He really is. He's having a great year. The junior running for over 2,200, almost 2,300 yards, over 40-something touchdowns. He's just a presence. And Dave Ozerowitz didn't use him 30 times a game, every game. So his stats were against when he needed to do it.
Think about it. He's put up those numbers. How many games did he even play in the fourth quarter?
No.
They probably they remind you back in the no Sean Moreno era for Middletown South. You wonder, gosh, how many touchdowns and yards could he have had if they weren't up by 5 touchdowns every time before the fourth quarter?
Big games equals big status. He had 291 yards in 3 quarters. He didn't run the ball at all in the fourth quarter.
In the first group semifinal ever, he's putting up numbers like that. And in the round before that against Marlboro, he had a huge game. I mean, every time they've called upon him to have a huge game, he has just gone wild. 200-plus yards rushing, throwing for touchdowns. And I know this is the offensive player of the year, but he's also had multiple interceptions on defense that have set up his own scores on the other end.
He's a baller.
I think he's a strong candidate for the state
He
offensive
is.
player of the year.
He is. And then Connor Dietz, the junior quarterback at Brick Memorial, who almost got 2,000 yards passing and rushing, and he had 3,900 yards and change. He's done everything. His fingerprints are on every touchdown. He's either running it, or he's throwing it, he's RPOing it. He does a great job. Again, those two guys are both back. They're underclassmen. Connor had a great season on offense. He was a one-man wrecking crew.
And not to mention, he's a junior, and he already holds numerous Brick Memorial School records for career and single season stuff. I think next year the hope is they're playing in bigger games with higher stakes. I don't think team-wise they achieved what they wanted to this year. Mm-hmm. So they're, that skews the numbers a little bit because he wasn't getting all of them in big, or, some of the big games he played great and they just lost because they didn't stop anybody.
Yeah, he's real smooth.
Yeah.
Real smooth player. Definitely a guy that deserves all that. And then Tyler Douglas in that division too was a one-man wrecking crew. The play that he made against Red Bank where he pushed the kid out of bounds and outran the whole team to win the game with the last 40 seconds. He's a dude. When Tyler Douglas walks on the field, he's a Division I player. He looks that part.
Well, and he made some throws. I saw them against Middletown North. I mean, he made a throw down the sideline, from the opposite hash that I was like, that's a throw you see in a major college football game on a Saturday, maybe even on a Sunday. So he impressed me a lot. It was a real shame that he didn't get a chance to play because of injury in the first round of the state playoffs. So he didn't get the spotlight that maybe like some of these other guys got because their teams were in the postseason. But he was, if there was a short conference MVP, certainly Ford you'd have to put there because he's been amazing. But the rest of that team is really, really good. Whereas I think if you took Tyler Douglas off Ocean, they would have really struggled. I mean,
did you see them? Did you see them in the state playoffs? He didn't play next game. Yeah,
right. And it was lopsided. So he to me did everything. And you're right. He was as advertised. He's committed to Temple. You're right. He's the only FBS quarterback from this senior class in the Shore Conference, and he looked every bit of the part of it. I thought, obviously he's an impressive passer, but I thought running wise he was really impressive too. He was.
And then the top running back statistically, because I had to say running back because this is the year the quarterback's running the football, but the top running back was Kieran Falzone, the senior at Raritan. And so he's got to be in the mix too. Great. I mean, he gets the ball 30, 35, as much as even almost 40 times a game. In that state playoff championship game, South Jersey 2, he had 39 carries? 300 yards. Everybody knew he was getting the football. He had the ball 95% of the time, and they still couldn't stop him. I mean, that's offensive player of the year, type of status right there with him, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're really going to miss him graduation-wise. I mean, he's just such a massive part of their offense. And again, he came to play in all their big games, and those are the guys that I'm always impressed by. During their playoff run, he was putting up 150, 180 every game, and then 300 against a Rumson team that's now playing to win all of Group 2 and is traditionally a good run defense. He really hurt them a lot in that game. And he also does it on special teams. He's had kickoff return for touchdowns.
He's a workhorse.
So you're right. When you're talking, like, you're right in the sense that, to me, some of the best runners this year play quarterback. But when you're talking about pure tailback guys, he's right up there, along with one other guy I think you're going to mention.
Sabino Portella. I know he doesn't fit the categories of certain things. When you talk MVP, it's like him. He does it all. I mean, he's the glue to the team. But when it's big games, he gets the football, and he's putting up good numbers. I mean, he looks great. When you tell players you should wrestle and play football, a lot of these football players go, I don't like to wrestle. Why do you want to wrestle? Because the way Sabino Portella plays, his balance and his power, and he is faster than you think he is. He's an all-around good football player, and he was the best player on the field against Holy Spirit in a very impressive game.
Yeah, I mean, 190 yards, and it's like you said, a lot of games they're well ahead pretty early. They don't need him to run the ball a ton and do great things every single game, but when it's a close game, whether it was the Donovan Catholic game or it's the Holy Spirit playoff game, then they're giving him the ball 15, 20, 25 times, which tells you the confidence they have in him and basically like, if we're going to go down, we're going down swinging with this guy leading the way. So I think that shows you and you're right. Some of the runs he's had where you think he's tackled and he's like parallel to the ground and stays on balance is incredible. There's a reason he's going to North Carolina to be a wrestler, because you're right. His body control is amazing.
He recovers so well. Like running to the sidelines, you think he's running out of bounds. He still balances himself, and then he's hitting you with the blow of the play. He's a good football player. A lot of good offensive players out there, but we had to narrow it down to 5, which I don't think anybody's going to argue with those guys.
Now, switching gears, let's go to the other side of the ball for the defensive player of the year candidates. I definitely know there's a couple that popped in my mind because you would always see their double-digit tackles or spectacular plays week to week. A lot of them in the same division too. So, who do you think right now are the top 4 guys that we should consider?
I say 4. I think there's a drop off after the 4th one. Wow, love to be in that all division meeting with the coaches. And they're all eyeballing each other. And I got a guy. You all do. But I don't think they could try it. But how about, let's start with Dante Veneri. He had a huge year last year. He's a senior this year. He had 5 interceptions for touchdowns last year. I mean, he was a Mike linebacker with those numbers. He didn't have those numbers this year, but he had a lot of tackles. He had 174.
Plays for Donovan Catholic, just to make that.
I'm sorry, he plays for he plays for Donovan Catholic. He had 174 tackles this year, which Max Preps had him as a leader in the state, but everybody doesn't put their stats in Max Prep, so I don't know if there's anybody got higher than him. But he's a great lateral movement linebacker that can go sideline to sideline. He's physical. He backs it up. His play had a great season last year and didn't have the eye-popping highlight videos he had last year with this year, but he's still a great football player.
And the team that had one of the Shore Conference's top defenses.
Yes, yeah, they did. Now, the only thing I'm going to say is they finished 3rd in the division and not taking anything away from them. You have Davin Bruton, a junior, Mike linebacker, looks like, a Ray Lewis type of guy. He's always chirping. The Holy Spirit game, he's going by us going, they don't want to run the football. They don't want to, and I'm looking at him going, I wouldn't want to run it on you either. But he had a quiet season a little bit just because teams, could not run the football or move the ball, and they're playing their backups too, Red Bank Catholic.
But I also think some teams schemed away from him. They ran the ball away. They tried to get a lineman to the second level and get a body on him, try to double him. Like to me, where he stood out was pass rush. When they sent him on the blitz or whatever, he would just overpower running backs who were there to block, just trample them, and then go right to the quarterback, or use his speed to get to guys. I felt like dropping in coverage. He did some decent things, but to me, he's more the aggressive, attacking style linebacker.
He's got a couple 1A offers, and he'll probably have a couple more in the spring. But he is their heart and soul of the defense at Red Bank Catholic.
You could argue that is the best defense in the Shore Conference is Red Bank Catholic. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's others that would want to get their arguments in, but that's the backbone of that team, and I think that he's the heartbeat of that.
But the stats that were coming out of this guy, Colin Gallagher, the junior.
Yeah, this is the one that I'm talking about. Every week you're like, oh my goodness.
He had hits behind the line of scrimmage. He had pressures. He had sacks, forced fumbles. I mean, Coach Antonucci sends him like he's going. So he's creating some plays. He's a dude plays both sides of the football. I'm real interested to see him in the Thanksgiving Day game to finish it up. But Colin Gallagher is a wrecking ball in the backfields of other opponents. Had a great season, and he's a stat compiler. He had stats majors every game. He was so consistent, and we were like, we can't give him defensive player of the week again. We can't, but you also couldn't hold it back either. Had a great season.
Yeah, and I think when you measure, because at this point too, a lot of times everyone has good stats by this point, right? Yeah. I mean, unless like you said, their team played a lot of blowout games and they weren't, or the rest of their defense was really, really good, so they're not going to get a million tackles. But the thing I appreciate about Gallagher is he did it against the good teams. I was even at the game where RBC beat them 35-0, right? So you think, it's a lopsided game. he had like 2 sacks in that game, and he was flying through the gap and making plays. So even though they struggled overall, even against the upper echelon, he was still producing game after game. And that to me is always a big sign of somebody who's a real contender for this, and that they're not just doing it in these games that they're winning by 40 points. They're doing it against kids that are FBS level linemen and, like dropping quarterbacks who are some of the best players in the shore. So I think to me, that's a really impressive thing for that.
And then the last one at Tom's River North, Ty Kazanowski. Again, so much talent in that field, and you got to zoom and pick one person. I think Ty was the quarterback of the defense. Very physical football player. You can see – you got to watch the games live. If you go to watch it on TV, you don't see it like on Huddle. But if you go to a game, like he's the guy that's barking at the players, get your helmet back on, do this, that. Like he's like a coach on the football field, and then he plays like a crazed dog on there. He goes all out. It's really impressive to see him play. Again, and Tom Drew North's defense is, their offense is getting all the PR, but their defense is the one that's looking great in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, the hardest thing with that team is narrowing it down. Who's the guy? I mean, they got so many talented players. And even Michael Ford on the other side of interceptions, Tariq Council with interceptions, Pruitt, their D linemen, their D tackles, Jalen Matthews and a couple other guys. Those guys are good, all of them. So, yeah, it's tough. But you're right. Kazanowski's the leader. He's the sideline-to-sideline guy. He sets the edge so you can't really run outside on them that much. And I feel like he comes up with the big plays, too. Like, it's 3rd and 1, and he gets the hit for, like, a -2.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing. It's like it's not so much always how many tackles you have, but the quality of them. Did you make the biggest play when your team needed it the most? Did you get that sack when like you had to have the ball back or you had to slow down their momentum? And I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah, and they got a lot of juniors, sophomores on a football team, and he's that mature senior that kind of puts them in their place a little bit in a respectful way. I like it. Go.
We talk about a lot of the stars in the Shore Conference. Let's talk about some of the more unsung guys. Their teams may be getting a ton of ink and think, the big time names on their squads are getting, a lot of attention, but they're doing some important work for some winning teams. Give me a couple candidates for that.
Scott, real quick, when I was the head football coach, I thought the Unsung Award was something just as valuable as the MVP. Guys that don't get the recognition that us coaches, when we're in our coaches meeting, are bragging about, but maybe the media's not giving them the respect out there and all that, because you need a lot of these players to get their due, and the unsung is somebody that deserves recognition. And we're going to start with Danny Calicari from from Raritan. Danny does it all. I know Kieran Falzone is their workhorse guy, but Danny, he's a kid that got hurt last year. He's a safety. He had an interception for 100 yards for a touchdown. He has kick returns, 2 kick returns for touchdowns. Jet sweeps, he scores for touchdown. When you're at the games, we always would joke saying there's going to be 1 or 2 plays that he's going to make a big play, but it'll be 2 plays for this, and then you wouldn't read anything else. But if you go to the game, he's all over the field. He's directing the defensive backs. I think Danny Calicari is a guy that is an all-shore player that doesn't get as much ink as he should.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with these utility players, they don't have enormous stats in one specific area.
Yeah.
But then if you add up what they've done in total, like it's impressive, and again, they also kind of like a glue guy on top of it, like a captain and a senior and things like that. He certainly fits that bill.
How about Connor Ciliento? Same mold as Dan Calicari. And we would always talk about he is still averaging 14 yards a carry.
He's the guy that is the definition of making the most of your opportunities.
Oh my
when he
God.
does touch the ball, he's going to make a big play.
At the Willingboro game, they yelled out, "We need a touchdown and a kick return." What does he do? Scores a touchdown and a kick return. I couldn't believe it. It's incredible. I should have listened to him and filmed it the whole time. But again, his jet sweeps, his kick returns, he's probably their MVP at Point Borough, but doesn't get the recognition in the media. He probably will be the MVP on their, when they have their team banquet. But Connor and Dan, both of them are huge utility players that are high demand to make the all-shore teams. And I'm talking like first team. They're great football players, great kids. Everybody speaks volumes about them. They're unsung, without a doubt. There's another one. Is the kid from Marlboro, Ryan Mendez, the wide receiver, outside linebacker. I mean, a specimen, a real big, good-looking wide receiver. And then his quarterback gets hurt. And we were saying back and forth, I bet you they'll put Mendez at quarterback. I'll bet you they'll put Mendez at running back when Cassie got hurt. But they didn't. But he still had a great season and elevated their program to where they went to. And he's going to be a great college football player because when he's exposed with his talent and they're getting him the football, he'll be a 30-catch wide receiver for 475 yards and be a great team locker room guy. Ryan Mendez is, without a doubt, a huge unsung.
And I think he was. I mean, first of all, he made huge plays. He was involved in that halfback pass, right, against Washington Township. That shot them. That was a huge play. But I think also he was just huge as far as the glue, as far as keeping that locker room together when they had to weather some really tough injuries.
Correct.
And when the world was against them, okay, the Marlboro story is over. They had their nice start. But no, they kept winning big games, and you only do that when you have guys like him that are making plays all over the field and that refuse to let the team think that just because this guy's out or that guy's out, we can't do this. When you can look to a guy who clearly believes, and is out there making plays against good teams, that gets everybody galvanized. And I think he was, when you look at the huge turnaround season they've had, he's a crucial part of it.
Here's one for you. Talk about being a locker room leader, leader on the line, plays both sides of the football. And let me add, he's playing in this Group 5 state championship. The kid moved from guard to center. His name's Josh Kay. He's a senior. Josh Kay is, without a doubt, an unsung guy. Guys don't Jalen Matthews, people talk about, the kid who's 6'7", 305. Josh Kay is the leader that moved from guard to center, and everything's working right now. I've seen him talking to all those linemen and the players, and he's a leader on the football field. He touches the football more than Micah Ford because he's snapping it to him. So give him some credit that he's an excellent football player.
And not only that, you have that program that's loaded with FBS caliber talent, but you need those program guys to go out and do their jobs. And another thing is they operate out of the shotgun. And I haven't seen him throw a bad snap the whole year.
Knock on wood.
Even in bad weather. Yes, knock on wood before the state championship game. But those are the kind of absolute program players that you need. And those are the ones that make picking the all-short team every year very interesting, right? Because you have players who are getting recruited at a really high level. They're 6'5", they're 300.
Correct.
Then you have the guys that are 6 foot, 220.
220,
yeah. Be major college prospect, or there might be Division II players or whatever. But they're not the all-world players. But on film, they had the best season of anybody, even the other big name guys. I think that's always I remember back to even thinking, Kenny Pickett, right, when he was at Ocean, now the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback.
Yep.
He was making incredible throws. He was amazing, but his numbers did not stack up close to the other kids who were playing that year. So I don't even know if he got third team all short, even though he was talent-wise the best quarterback. So Josh Kay is one of those guys where, there might be a center is getting recruited on a higher level than him or some other kid out there. But when you're talking about results, the guy who went out and did it every game, he's one of those guys.
Well, I remember when Coach Oz talked to him about, I want you to make the move. He was a little reluctant at first because that's not his position. And you're trying to make a kid feel comfortable being uncomfortable. He made the switch, and the rest is history. They're 13-0 and one of the best football teams ever. So Josh Kay deserves some recognition with that. How about Cooper Bunnell? When you talk about a kid who plays both ways, he's got a one-digit number, and he's a tough guy. He's a lineman, a D lineman, plays fullback. He's also a tough guy there, too. Cooper Bunnell is one of the heart and soul players of the football program at Rumson, where a lot of people don't know about it, but when Old Shore comes around, you're going to know about his name. He's a tough, aggressive football player. He's a throwback football player, and you're going to see a lot of him in 2 weeks playing for the Group 2 state championship, which I know that he's going to do well in that game.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a compliment if you're a two-way player at Rumson in general, because they're such a two-platoon team, and they have such depth and talent most years that the coaches think highly of you if they want you on the field for as many snaps as you can be out there. And, that's a team that got better and better. That offensive line at the beginning of the year, that I felt like they struggled a little bit just because they were all new. It was an entirely new line, and now they're out here putting 42 points on teams in the group semifinals. That shows how far they came. And defensively, going out and shutting people down to some degree out there, or just coming up with huge clutch stops. I mean, that's the thing with Rumson. It might not always be the prettiest, or the stats don't look amazing, but they get the job done. They go out and get the job done. And they have a lot of guys on that team that, I mean, I always just think of Scott Venancio, right? Who thinks like, you think I'm too small, you think I'm not good enough. I'm going to go out here and score 3 touchdowns on you, and then I'm going to let you hear about it when it's over.
How weird.
Like, guys like that, that kind of, they typify Rumson, that people stereotype us as a certain type of player or something, and we're going to prove you wrong every time. I think that he's another one of those guys.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at him. Then there's one more at Red Bank Catholic. You have Davin Bruton at the Mike linebacker. Well, there's an outside linebacker by the name of Mike Palmieri that a lot of people may not know of. He has 73 tackles, 7 hits behind the line of scrimmage, and I had him rated as one of the top outside linebackers in the class in 2023, that the average person going to a game doesn't know about him, but they're going to know about him when we do all short teams. He'll definitely be in the mix in 1, 2, or 3 teams we're there. You take him out of the equation. Now Davin Bruton's got to adjust not having his senior leader on the outside perimeter. So I think Mike Palmieri is one of those guys on a star-studded football team that's not getting his name out there enough, but we didn't forget about you, Mike. We definitely didn't forget about you. And definitely good luck against DePaul in the non-public B state championship. Well, Scott, I really believe the Unsung is just as important as the MVP. And, those guys would definitely.
And who knows? These guys have one last chance to be in the spotlight, right? You never know which one of them might come up with a huge play here at the end of this week, or in 2 weeks for the group final. So, we may maybe some foreshadowing. We may be naming these names, and then they'll go out and make a huge play with a state championship on the line. It was an exciting year for the next wave of talent in the Shore Conference, already revealing itself from the sophomore class and even a freshman in there. So let's talk about some of the best young players who really kind of broke through this year. Sophomores that, are already talked about in the all shore discussion.
First we got, again, sophomore, freshman, top players. Got to start with this kid. If you go to a game, you don't think he's a freshman. I come up to hear on him. He's Jalen Matthews of Tom River North. He is as aggressive as anybody out there. And you wouldn't think that. You would think a kid that's that big, he's 6'7", a lean 305. You'd be like, yeah, he's kind of like a little kid out there. No, he's like a man-child. Got 20-plus offers, and he definitely played to that level this year. And he's going to be playing for a state overall championship, and mainly because that kid, Jalen Matthews, plays offensive tackle, defensive tackle, and he's a big-time recruit nationally. And not just that, he's a great football player. Great football player on both sides. The other guy I want to talk about is there was a quarterback controversy in 2 places, Rumson and Red Bank Catholic. I want to talk to those coaches privately after the season. I want to know, what are you trying to do?
Yeah, I never know if it's a quarterback controversy or just a quarterback smokescreen of this was our guy all along, and then we just didn't reveal that until week 1.
We're being talked a little differently behind the scenes, and we're going to talk about that. But Frankie Williams of Red Bank Catholic, what did he do? First play, little RPO, touchdown to Soph for 75-something yards, and the rest is history. He filled the shoes of Brown this year like I don't think anybody imagined. And he did a great job. Frankie Williams is not only a great sophomore quarterback, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the Shore.
And I was just really impressed with him in that Holy Spirit game. In terrible weather conditions, he threw 2 touchdowns, and they were good balls.
Yeah.
In the snowy, wintry mix, like to Emmanuel Ross, and he had a couple other really nice passes. And meanwhile, Holy Spirit had a really experienced quarterback, Sean Burns, on the other end, who was struggling. Mm-hmm. So, for Frankie Williams to put up a performance like that, was really, an eye opener to me. Just be given the stakes and how bad the weather was. I thought he played great. And again, his biggest thing is, he showed flashes here and there, like a little bit of inconsistency, which you're going to see from young players. But the high end, his potential is like, this guy's going to be unstoppable by next year, and by his senior year, forget it.
Oh, he's reading different guys and putting defenders in conflict with the RPOs. Does a great job. And Coach Joe
it's an interesting thing to me that two rivals right down the road from each other, former longtime Thanksgiving rivals, both have sophomore quarterbacks who are impact guys.
Owen O'Toole is having a great run. He's going to be playing for the Group 2 state championship, and he's got over 20 touchdowns. He'll be over 2,000 with his next completion in the next game. And again, there was a quarterback controversy, or we didn't know he was starting until the first week.
I think the ultimate compliment to Owen O'Toole at Rumson is this is a team that always, during this great run they've had, pretty much has been a dominant run team. They run, and their quarterback's usually another runner. But his talent is so good that they kind of revamped what they do and revamped their offense around his passing ability.
I'm hearing he's a really good baseball player. Just put the mitt to the side. I think he's a college quarterback. The season he's having, again, he's not just going to be in there for his sophomore stuff, but overall, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the shore, without a doubt. It was dominated by sophomore quarterbacks this year with that. Then you got Luke Waffle, the outside linebacker at Milltown South. When you talked to Coach Antonucci before the season, he said he's very comparable to Colin Gallagher, right? And I went, really? So it's high accolades, and he's a baller. I mean, he was always making big plays, behind a defense led by Gallagher. But this kid Waffle with Gallagher is one of the great tandems coming back next.
Yeah, I guess the biggest compliment I could say is when I saw them in person and he made a play, I was like, oh, that was another hit by Gallagher in the backfield. And then he stands up, I'm like, oh, wait, that's why he looks like him. He runs like him. It's crazy. It's like straight out of like a cloning machine.
Yeah.
Except he's only a sophomore, which means like his potential is really high up there. I think he's a guy that's going to be in the defensive player of the year conversation the next 2 seasons.
When Coach Nooch tells me something about a player like that, I'm writing it down. He's not BSing. There's 2 guys at Donovan, a sophomore and a freshman. We have Michael.
That's a whole team that they're between their freshman and sophomore class, because they're going to
let's talk about their roster. Yeah, right? Yeah. Michael Thomas III, he's got a couple FBS offers, rightfully so. He's explosive. His first step's great. He impressed me with his hands being a lot stronger than I thought he was. He makes some nice highlight plays on there, and he's a good one. I mean, he's a good one out there, and you got to account for him wherever he is on the field as a receiver, a running back, a kick returner, punt returner. Very explosive. Had a little bit over 500-something yards receiving in Coach LaBarca's offense, and he's one of the top players in the state of New Jersey, without a doubt. And the freshman running back, Najee Calhoun, had over 900 yards rushing as a freshman and 180 yards rushing against Bergen Catholic, at Bergen Catholic. How many freshmen could say that?
No, I mean, you're talking about, too, when a freshman comes out and puts those kind of numbers up, right? You're looking at like Ken Catus, like at Keyport. Those were the numbers he put up when he went on his way to becoming the Shore Conference's all-time leading rusher.
Yeah.
So, you look at the future for Calhoun. And again, don't forget, they played in a lot of games where they were way ahead in the third or fourth quarter, where he's not getting carries at all, barely in the fourth quarter. But yeah, to do what he's done already against the schedule they play, he was, for a while there, he was a dark horse offensive player of the year candidate, I felt like.
Yeah.
So for him to do that, and you just think when he gets bigger and stronger and faster, and he's already this good, I mean, you're talking like a guy who has state player of the year level ability.
Scott, when I saw him live, he gave me thoughts of Manny Bowen, the guy that I coached that went on at
Penn State.
He's a good-looking athlete, smooth athlete, a kid that you could say could put a lot more weight on and maybe be an outside linebacker, but he's got that frame, and it's not very comfortable knowing that you may be playing against him for the next 3 years, Calhoun. And then there's one down in the Liberty division, Colin Palumbo, I know they were very talented with sophomores and freshmen there, but the one guy who had the best offensive statistics down there was Colin Palombo, who's also a strong safety. Just a kid that never comes off the field, 1,300 something yards and over 15, 17 touchdowns he had in Coach Jay Graber's offense. And Coach Graber couldn't speak the world any more positive stuff about him. Hard worker, a gamer, that type of. I know he's a wrestler, so he's a guy that is definitely going to be on the tips of a lot of colleges in the next couple of years.
Well, and then you just look at that whole Matawan team, right? They were all pretty young. He's part of a good nucleus that already got a division title this year, and they're going to be looking for a lot more in the next couple.
Amir Martinez, the quarterback, Wesley Crones, the freshman who's already got an offer as a freshman. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Matawan, they have the kind of nucleus to restore their glory days. To get back to where they're a state title contender. Yeah, and those are the guys that they're going to be right there leading them.
It's nice waking up in the morning knowing that you got guys coming back for the next 3 years. Coach Graber's smiling over there in Matawan. Let's talk top offensive lineman, defensive lineman, player of the year candidates in the Shore Conference. And let's start with Red Bank Catholic because they got two of them. Let's start with Aiden Donahue. The defensive end that played defensive tackle last year moved to defensive end and had a great season leading Red Bank Catholic to the American Division and also playing for the non-public B state championship this weekend right there. Aiden Donahue is a force at the end. He's playing his right position. He was playing out of position last year where he was an all-shore player at D tackle. He's now at the end, and you'll be hearing a lot from him in the postseason awards with that. Lorenzo Portella, who plays both ways, I love him at guard. I really do. I also love when his brother's running behind him too, but Lorenzo Portella is one of those great-looking guards who can, kick people out or pull and get that linebacker in space. He's an athlete playing line. He's a physical competitor. I really like him on both sides of the ball, but I really like him at guard, and he's leading Red Bank Catholic to, I hope, another state championship with that. At Milltown South, Tommy White, guy in the trenches for Coach Antonucci, just a leader up there, physical, road grader type of guy. He did a great job. He loves great double teams and one-on-ones and just likes to win the battles in the trenches. And Tommy White from Milltown South is a guy that you're going to hear from, too, in the postseason. And then at Donovan Catholic, Zaire Day. He played D-line this year. I know he was flirting with playing outside linebacker, played D-line, and he was all over the field making plays and being a threat off the ball. Really quick first step. And his closing speed is really something impressive. He's only a junior. Zaire Day is only a junior with that. And Mr. White is a senior, and Lorenzo Portella is a junior. If I forgot to mention that with there, all four of those guys, including Aiden Donahue, are very impressive in the American Division. Then you have Jalen Matthews from Toms River North, the outstanding sophomore, 6'7", 305, offensive tackle, defensive tackle, who's all over the field, making plays, so aggressive. He's got 20-plus FBS offers, and he played to that level this year. He really did. And they're playing for the Group 5 state championship, the right to win it all, behind Jalen Matthews, having a great season at O-line, D-line. Jack Lopez from Milltown North, a Division I athlete that is going to be playing at the next level, Division I. A ferocious, aggressive D-lineman, does it all on both sides of the football too, and has a great reputation of being one of the very best at what he does. Jack Lopez, the senior offensive lineman, defensive lineman with that. Then we have at Point Borough, Cole Skinner, the big 6'5", 300-pound commit to Temple, had a very good season, doing what he does, played more offense, not really defense spurts here or there, but led Point Borough to a 10-1 season. They won the Independence Division. They were really dominant all season. They did lose in the second round of the playoffs to William-Borough, who eventually won the South Jersey Group 2 state championship. But Cole Skinner had a terrific career and also very importantly, a very good senior season for Point Borough. And the last one is one of my sleepers is Nick Windsor from Matawan. Helped Matawan win the Liberty Division, played offense and defensive line equally as good. Could be a player of the year defensively. That's how good he was on the other side of the football. I like him on offense, though. I really do. I think he's one of the more athletic kids that could dunk a basketball on the court. What a tremendous-looking athlete. Lean, a 265, 270-pound kid that can jump and dunk a basketball is pretty impressive. But more importantly, he can kick butt on the football field and did it all year for Coach Graber and was one of the top players in the Shore Conference. Those were my 8 offensive/defensive linemen player of the year candidates. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot of good football players out there. I hope don't feel slated if I missed you here or there. Let us do our all-star teams, and I'm sure a lot of those names will be fall into place and all that. But these were the top 8 that I seen on film, seen live, and also got the reports from coaches too with that. All right, let's talk special teams player of the year candidates. A lot of great players. Narrowed down to 8 players. So here we go. 2 guys from Raritan. You have Kieran Falzone and Dan Calicari. Both guys had 2 kick return touchdowns, respectively, for Raritan. Raritan was the Central Jersey Group 2 state finalist. They lost in the championship game. You don't want to kick the ball deep to those 2 guys. They've took it to the house and proved that field position would be changed very, very drastically if you kick the ball to any one of those guys. So they had 4 touchdowns by those 2 players. So both those guys are definitely candidates for that. Jameer Howard. Jameer Howard also had 2 touchdowns for Manasquan. And he's quite an impressive kid, catching the football and striding out, making big plays. But he's made 2 with field position. You kick the ball to him, you're either going to get a touchdown scored against you, or he's going to change the field position really quick. A lot of teams have been squib kicking away from Jameer Howard, that explosive kick returner there. Connor Siliento had 1 kick return touchdown and had a 34-yard kick return average, an 18.5 punt return average, and 1,000 all-purpose yardage. People just don't kick the ball deep to him at all. I was at the state semifinal game against Willingboro, where I remember the coach screaming out, "We need a touchdown." They kicked the ball deep to him, and you know what? Scored a touchdown. Siliento is a playmaker on his special teams, which is very, very obvious. Samu Kamut from Long Branch, game changer. Nobody would kick the ball to him at all. And when they did, he took it to the house for a touchdown. He had 1 kick return touchdown. He is a threat on special teams. You do not want to kick the ball deep to him at all. And to me, if you're a special teams coordinator and you are organizing kicking the ball away from him and losing yardage in your kicks because of him, that's a big reason why he's on special teams player of the year candidate. He changes the whole complexion of special teams with that. You have 2 guys from Tomview North. Nazir Jackson, the outstanding speedy sophomore, has 2 kick returns for a team that's playing in the Group 5 overall state championship. Nazir, playmaker in big games. As a sophomore, scoring kick return touchdowns like that is just a big threat for the Mariners in their kick return game. And then their kicker, Yanni Papakolis, they scored a lot of touchdowns, and he's had to kick extra points, 58 extra points this year. So I include him like that because that's like a field goal, it really is. He's made 58 of them, and when he kicks it, it just doesn't barely make the uprights. It goes way over like a big-time field goal when he's kicking right there. Big, strong athlete, too. He's a sophomore, too, kicker. So Coach Oz has got a lot to look forward to when he scores touchdowns the next 3 years because he's got a sophomore coming in there and booting it for him right there. You have Anthony Macchio, one of the top reputational returners out there. He has a kick return touchdown and a punt return touchdown, Anthony does. And he's known for his playmaking skills, and he did it right there, and teams do not want to kick the ball at all to him at all. Equally as a threat as kick return and also as a punt returner, Anthony Macchio is a dangerous threat for Manalapan with that. And then the last one, Jake Zawackel, the kicker for Middletown South. He's a kicker. He has 5 field goals, 37 being the longest. He's also their punter and does a great job. He's an athlete. So he's as good as a punter as he is a kicker. Smooth kicker, 2-year starter. He's only a junior. He'll be back. He plays every position out there, quarterback, safety, all that stuff. But as a field goal kicker, he has got cold water through his veins, kicking the football, and he's a strong kicker. He can make all sure as a kicker, as a quarterback, or as a special teams, as a safety or utility. Somewhere he can make all sure and probably will with that. But as a kicker, he's one of the top kickers out there without a doubt. 5 field goals and a 37 being along with that. Those are my special teams player of the year candidates. A lot of players we had to choose from. We narrowed it down to 8. But those guys right there you're going to hear from in the next week or two.